Okay. We will be having a couple of individuals joining us, and we are now officially live on Njenje Media TV platform. So, good evening, viewers. Good evening, everyone. As usual, you know my name. My name is Mazes. Okay, tonight I'll bring you a news that broke yesterday. That's going to be a special a program following the statement by the U.S. President yesterday, President Donald J. Trump, who has declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, CPC, over what he described as the mass slaughter of Christians by radical Islamists. Trump posts has generated global attention since yesterday, not only because of its strong wordings, but also because of its potential implication for Nigeria's international relations, human rights image, and internal security narrative. What exactly does this mean for Nigeria? Is this a diplomatic warning, a humanitarian concern, or a prelude to a stronger U.S. action? Joining me tonight to unpack these developments are Mike Arnold, our special guest. Mike is an international analyst. Mike, once more, I say hello to you now that we've started official.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. And we have Dr. Bola Akinyemi, a public affairs analyst who's going to be joining us, and Barrister Eze Luche. And I do have also, if they are able to join, some leaders of thought from the Middle Belt, though not confirmed, but I sent them the invitation the moment you agreed to join me. Together, we will examine these facts that politics and the potential fallout from Trump's declaration. Stay tuned. This evening promises to be an insightful conversation. So, Mike, for many people who do not know you, and I'm sitting down here with you, having this conversation, would you mind telling us, by your own words, who you are? The first time Nigerians ever saw, many people, myself, the first time I saw you was when you had that last month when you had that press conference with Reno Omokri, where the press conference appeared to have turned 360 degrees from what probably the government was expecting and what Reno was also expecting. And since then, you became, I will tell you, you are now the most wanted person in Nigeria, a person of interest, if I have to say that. So could you please tell us who you are so that that will kick off the conversation, John?
Sure. I'm a simple man from the beautiful hill country of Texas. I did serve for 2 years recently as the volunteer mayor of my small town. It's not a partisan position. It's mostly focused on the basics, the streets and the pipes and such. So it's not really a political position. It's a public service position, at least in my town. 2,000 people. So, we live out in the country like a village, and I'm a grandfather, 4 grandchildren, four children, been married for, gosh, I think it's 35 years now. I'm getting old. Um, got 2 dogs and 2 cats. And, we run a little construction company, not a wealthy man. But I served prior in my life. I was 12 years as a domestic missionary in the United States. I founded a youth mentorship organization and ended up growing nationwide. And then I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a builder. I'm not a maintenance man. I don't like, after I build something, I get bored and I need to hand it off. And so I did that about 15 years ago, handed that organization off. And that's about the same time I started going to Nigeria. I was sort of tricked into going. Uh, a friend of mine was invited to be a keynote speaker at the Unity for Africa conference. Back then, it was a pretty significant thing. It was their 20th annual. It was founded by Professor John Ofwebu, who ended up being my mentor for several years. Amazing fella. And my friend who was to be the keynote, I was just going to accompany him. He had to drop out at the last minute, and they made me take his place. And I was never a public speaker prior to that, sort of baptism of fire, but I ended up being the keynote of a week-long leadership conference in Owerri, and then rebooted again the next week in Abuja. Um, they invited me back to do it again the next year, the first time in 20 years that group had invited somebody back like that. And it became at least an annual thing, and sometimes more than once a year. I've now been to Nigeria 16 times. Um, in 2019, I was there with, I had organized a small mission group. I think there were 6 of us. And we were doing the typical thing, driving around, flying from here to there, speaking in churches, speaking in schools, going and spending some time in an orphanage or what have you. Um, and we had the biggest event of the trip lined up. 21 churches had come together. My local right-hand man, my dear brother, Pastor Jed DeGrace in Abuja, had put this together, put everything he had into getting these 21 churches together. Literally everything was on the line. And we were in the vehicle with the air conditioner on, engine running, ready to go to this event. And Pastor Jed came out of the building, and he was distraught. And he knocked on the window and pulled me out. And I said, "What's up?" He said, "I've been in prayer. I can't take you." And I was shocked because I knew what he had put into that. And canceling it cost him everything. And in fact, he had to move because he was getting death threats for canceling 21 churches. But I said, what do you mean? He said, "The Spirit told me that you're in danger and I'm not supposed to take you." Talk about an obedient man. Talk about a discerning man. That afternoon, we found out later in the news, the venue was shot up and 2 people were killed. So he saved our lives.
Wow.
I said, "What are we doing then?" I said, "We're dressed up, engines running." He said, "Let's go visit an IDP camp. That's what we're supposed to do."
Yeah.
He had never been to one. I thought all these years, I thought he knew right where it was and he knew where to take us. But we stopped and asked for directions. And it right in the middle of Abuja, modern city, glass buildings, paved roads. We turn off onto a little dirt trail and come to this, no other way to describe it but a hellhole. I mean, just horrible, horrible living conditions. Sewage ditch, shanties made out of logs and feed bags and tin scraps, and children everywhere. And I always say that these camps are the ugliest place on earth and the most beautiful place on earth at the same time, because the spirit of the people is just amazing in the middle of that hardship. But we went there and we couldn't stay long for security. But again, we were led like a tour guide by the Holy Spirit. And we went straight in to this shanty where there was a woman and started talking with her, Miss Hannatu. Oh God, the story she told was just incomprehensible, of the trauma and the violence and the blood that she and her 3 daughters witnessed. Barely escaped. Won't tell the whole story, but they made it down to Abuja and been stuck there at that time for more than 5 years. And
So,
yeah, so
so would it,
that's where my introduction to all this was there.
so would it be fair to say that you entered Nigeria as by accident? Actually, it wasn't something you planned for so long.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So, and the things you saw in Nigeria when you came to Nigeria, especially the IDP camp you visited in Abuja, was like the drug that got you hooked and you kept
No,
coming back.
so there was 9 years prior to that I kept coming back. And let me tell you, and when I first started coming in 2010, Nigeria was the only place on earth where radical Islam was being pushed back. It was stable. We didn't have, I mean, you might not go out and walk down the street alone by yourself at night, but it didn't have the sense of insecurity. In fact, I was in Abuja in 2011 when they blew up the UN headquarters, and that was a shock. Any attack back then was an outrage. It was a rare thing. And but my first week in Nigeria in 2010, not knowing what to expect, and I have to admit, my first week I felt sorry for Nigerians, because all the things that I took for granted that they lacked, electricity and running water, and the basics, the creature comforts. But it wasn't long, but a week into it, that flipped, and it stayed flipped ever since. I feel sorry for Americans because of the things that Nigerians take for granted that we lack, things that matter more: the family, the honor, the integrity, the faith. the energy, the entrepreneurship, the hope. Those are the traits that made America great, but we don't have anymore. Those traits are in Nigeria. So I often, in many ways, feel more at home in Nigeria than I do in the United States because the character of the people I relate to. And so 9 years, it was that. It was my second home, and I wasn't keeping up with the politics and what was going on in the North. And so
Okay.
in 2019, it was a shock. It was an eye opener, and it changed my life obviously
Wow.
forever. I promised Miss Hannah I'd tell her story, and that's been my
Wow.
effort, my endeavor, and my passion, and everything ever since. I'm almost there. I'm almost ready. you know, but
Okay.
I've been everywhere. At IDP camps. Drove from Abuja to Jos to Bokos. Been from Makoko to Bakuma to Bokos. Uh, I've also been. I've spent considerable time at close quarters. Private meetings with General Yakubu Gowon, with prayed in Cardinal Oniakin's private chapel on 2 occasions with him. I've spent time in Good Luck Jonathan's living room, and when he leaned in and he said, "It's the minerals, it's the blood minerals. Look into that." And he told me that. Um, I've got, gosh, I've been chatting for a while with everybody from the Senate President to the NSA to the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the Minister of Information, and on up and down. God has just opened so many doors. But I've also been in Bocos not long after the Christmas massacre. I've been in shanties with people that I consider dear friends. So God's given me a real deep tour and connection to see what's really going on with this situation.
Now, the last visit you had, the last visit you had in Nigeria before you left, it
Yeah,
appears that visit changed everything in terms of, giving you more visibility to the people of Nigeria and also to the issue of a country of particular concern, actually,
yeah,
and the narrative of genocide. Now, many people, especially Nigerians, will say that we know that people are dying. We know that our governments are not doing enough to protect the Nigerian citizens. However, that they do not think that even when government has failed, that what is happening is genocide, right? Now, that's it's the word on the streets. That is the argument on the X space. That's the Twitter street.
sure,
As someone who, you know, you were, I don't know, you were invited by the government through Reno Omokri to come and say the truth. You've gone round these places where these killings had happened. Now, can you walk us through how you came into Nigeria and the report that you presented? How do
sure.
you think that report aided the president of the United States to make that announcement that he made yesterday?
Um, so let me tell you this. First of all, I know from firsthand experience, repeatedly, and I have hidden camera footage and stuff to show how it works.
Mm,
um, that the Nigerian government for more than a decade has been lying and gaslighting the Nigerian people,
wow.
uh, both specifically on the issue of the internally displaced people. I remember in 2021, one of our first return trips after finding that. So 2019, we were there at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit. So nobody did anything in 2020. Our first
Mm,
ability to return back was in 2021 and did a lot. We were undercover. It was very dangerous. That's when Buhari was actually arresting and torturing documentary filmmakers. There was an Israeli film crew that was arrested and tortured. So we that was very dangerous. But I remember sitting down with a journalist who, these journalists they're propagandists. But we wrote for a big newspaper, and he was connected with the administration and talking about internally displaced. He said, "No, no, 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 no. They're vagrants. They're bums. They're homeless. They're criminals." And that was the party line.
really?
And I've seen that over and over and over. New Kuchingoro, for example, I found an online published report by the UNHCR documenting multiple IDP camps in the FCT, one of them being New Kuchingoro. Um, and when we circled back to them in 2021, they sent us back an email officially stating there are no IDP camps in Abuja. The UN's official position is there are no IDP camps in Abuja. That's the Nigerian government's position. I know of 6 of them with at least 30,000 IDPs. And all you have to do is walk in and talk to them. And they're eyewitnesses to genocide. And that's why the government denies them, suppresses them, grinds them down. They die painful, slow deaths from preventable things. And the people living right next door don't know that they're internally displaced people, that they fled violence, that they're innocent, productive people that have just had everything ripped away. The people living right next door don't know that. There was the part of this camp. The police chief gave an order to bulldoze it, and eventually they did. But I went and confronted him in his office. I have hidden camera video where this police chief is saying, "Oh no, they're all criminals. There's no IDPs." Well, let me introduce you to the grandmother that has a bullet scar on her arm. When she went out to go find her son's head in Gwoza, the little village of Ngoshe, her son was a Bible translator that decapitated him. She went out to find his head, and they grabbed her grandmother, put her on the back of a motorcycle. She still has scars on the inside of her legs from the exhaust pipes. They took her to the Boko Haram camp, and the leader said, "Oh, don't kill her here. Take her back home to kill her because the bodies stink too much." And they told her to get back on the motorcycle. She ran off, and they shot her, and she has a scar. And the police is calling her a criminal and is going to bulldoze her home. I did a press conference 2 years ago when we were laying the foundation for a new school in the FCT in Wassa, and spoke to the press about how my organization builds schools in IDP camps for IDPs. And the newspaper article came out and said we build schools in rural communities. It's been sterilized. It's been purged. And by the way, that right there is, by legal definition, international law, the degrading and denying of aid to internally displaced people is genocide. It is prosecutable. This government can be prosecuted today for genocide, for what they've done to these internally displaced people. And there's up to 10 million of them. We don't know. There's no census, but they admit to 3.5 million, but they deny them. That is genocide. The President Tinubu today stands guilty of genocide, no doubt about it, for his degrading denial and slow killing of the eyewitnesses. And they're mostly widows and orphans. It's the most tragic thing I've ever seen. I don't know what Brano Omokri was smoking. I believe God befuddled his mind. The reason I connected with him was to discuss genocide, was because he was a champion trying to call people's attention to it. And then all of a sudden he flip-flops from party and then he flip-flops into the killing fields and it says it's a hoax. And he calls me because he's panicked because of Bill Maher and Ted Cruz and all this stuff. He calls me and says, "Oh, will you come?" And I said, "What? I had a suspicion of what was going on here. I was in Bible study on Sunday morning, and here comes Rainer Omokri and Nuhu Rabadu calling me on the phone saying, 'Please come quickly.'" And I said, I wrote it. God gave me wisdom to put it in writing. What is expected of me? He said, "Just come tell the truth." It's like, okay, I can do that. He never asked me, "Well, will you join me in lying?" He just told me to tell the truth. So that's exactly what I did. And I had no idea. I mean, it's a long story, and maybe somebody will make a movie out of it someday because it's certainly worthy of that. It was a crazy, crazy, amazing, weird, surreal experience. And I updated my will, and I said goodbye to my children. We had a farewell dinner, and they knew I might not make it home. I didn't think it was, likely I would be killed, but I knew there was a chance. And a lot of my advisors said, that know that stuff, said, they wouldn't be smart to do it, but then again, it's Nigeria, So I thought I might die, but I didn't expect. I had Grok run a stats just a couple days later, just like 3 days later, and it had been across all echoes in the media over 3 billion impressions, 3 billion impressions, and it flipped the narrative from 80% genocide denial to 70% genocide affirmation in 3 days. So yeah, that made a difference. But here's the thing: it hasn't crossed the Atlantic. Nobody here knows me. Now the Nigerians do, but I don't know if it had a bearing on what Donald Trump did. Now, part of that trip, I was crazy again. I don't want to get too in details, but with 30 hours on the airplane, hit the ground, they take us not to a bathroom, not for a cup of water, not for anything, take us straight into photo ops with this phony can chairman in there with these three northern mullahs. The guy sitting next to me is the one that had publicly declared we all celebrate when unbelievers are killed. And I knew that. I was sitting next to him for a photo op. Um, so, and then straight from there into Arise TV. I begged for 60 seconds to put on my blue blazer so I wouldn't look like an idiot traveling 30 hours straight to Arise TV live.
Yeah,
Countdown.
I saw that a little altercation, between Reno and Charles Anagolu. I
Yeah.
think trying to really say it has to happen now. So what was
Well,
the argument?
also Reno was supposed to sit in the remote room because he's the fixer. He wasn't the guest. My
Okay.
traveling companion was supposed to be sitting next to me, but Reno, they almost came to blows. Reno forced himself to sit next to me so he could try to trap me in it. But so I took video. I knew they were surveilling me from the moment I was off the plane. I mean, gosh, it's the national security advisor. I had to put VPNs on everything and use encrypted communications, and we only whispered. But I took hidden camera video of these mullahs or these imams, the talking points, reciting these talking points over and over and over. Everybody that came, even our vehicle driver, recited the talking points to us. 3 days later, I come out there, and the U.S. envoy comes out and does the same exact word for word talking points. And he's a known crony of Tinubu. He ended up being the stooge that didn't get me to be. But so I did a video with here's this imam saying these words. Here's our envoy. Here's the imam. Here's the envoy. Back and forth. I expect Trump probably heard about that. So I can't say anything else made an impact, but maybe that did. Hopefully.
Okay. That's actually when Nigerians talk about this, many do think, oh, it's all about Tinubu. But we tend to forget that in 2020, um, President Trump did the same thing. So basically, this is the
Yeah.
second time Nigeria, because when
Yeah.
Biden came in,
Yeah.
Biden removed it. So now
Yeah.
this is the second time. So because what is going on the space now, it's trying to degenerate into ethnic law that Southerners and some particular section of the South is trying to cause this level of mayhem and all the whatnot, right? So it's clear to make that clarification that this is it has nothing, not necessarily about Tinubu, but as you clarified, his inability to get a grip on it makes him culpable, right?
Correct.
Now, if I say to you, because Donald Trump has done what he's done now, in your view, what does that mean in practical diplomatic terms? Does Nigeria need to be wary and afraid of
Yeah.
anything?
What I've said, I mean, so I'm thankful that he did that. It's a powerful tool, but I've said from the beginning, I wasn't pushing for that. I wasn't pushing against it because the fact is, the killers in the north, for one, we know that they're supported by the illicit blood mineral trade. The Nigerian government itself admits to at least $9 billion a year of gold, lithium, tin, rare earth elements being stolen from, well, the north. Interestingly, right under the nose of the Sultan, who's never said anything about it, never tried to stop it. But $9 billion a year that's looted. And where does that money going? The government says at least 10% of it ends up funding terror and corruption. That's at the least that's $900 million a year. No sanction's going to stop that. They're not in it for economic reasons anyway. So what it does though is puts a lot of pressure on the government to do something about it. What I was, and I'll say this: Nigeria's salvation is not coming from a white man. It's not coming from Washington, D.C. It's coming from the good people of Nigeria that when they finally know the truth, are going to rise up and uh, establish a new, bright, hopeful prosperous, peaceful nation that
Mm,
everybody believes is possible. The hope's not coming from the United States. It's sure heck's not coming from me. It's not coming from Washington, D.C. If I can help the Nigerian people wake up and see the truth, then I'll consider it that I've done what God called me to do.
mm,
Um, but what makes me excited about Trump's announcement was not the sentence that he's declared it a country of particular concern. It's the next sentence that says, "This is just the start." I believe that, and I think Donald Trump doesn't mess around. And Donald Trump in his first term was still learning things, and he was not as effective as he could have been. This is a gentleman who's actually lost. Probably the only politician in history that's gone down in net worth while he's been in office. Um, he has ended 8 wars. He's brought peace to the Middle East for no other reason than it's the right thing to do. And I said before this, I said, what else is there? How do you go on from there? Well, you end Christian genocide. You end genocide. And I believe that's his motivation. And I believe he knows exactly how to do it. I believe he's in a hurry and he's not going to mess around. I believe, and other things includes criminal prosecutions. I would be in favor of the evidence demands an investigation of the Sultan of Sokoto for being an architect of this. I'm not saying he is. I'm saying the evidence demands an investigation. And if that investigation concludes that he's tied to it, I'd be in favor of declaring the Sultanate as a foreign terrorist organization. I think Reaper drones and Tomahawk missiles will do a whole lot more to stop this than sanctions. But that's just me.
well,
That's just me.
talking about the Sultan of Sokoto, you there was an article today.
I kicked the hornet's nest, didn't I?
I know. Hold on. There was an article today, and you tweeted actually. The Sultan or his people responded to you, and
they responded by saying, "We're not going to respond, but here's how we respond."
So in their response,
somebody's scared when they do that,
So in their response, actually, they said, "Well, ignore him," but you responded by saying, "Well, whenever someone says ignore that individual, that means that individual is saying something." So, and you're sticking with that. Actually,
Well, look, I'm not saying he's guilty of anything. I haven't said that. What I've said is the evidence demands some answers.
Yeah.
Here's a man who was a brigadier general intel in Pakistan and Afghanistan during the war. I expect that job would have put him in close contact, potentially, with at least intelligence, if not direct contact with these organizations like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. At the same time he was there in Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is documented U.S. military after-action reports when the U.S. military captured Taliban units. Occasionally, there were Nigerian fighters embedded in the Taliban, fighting alongside the Taliban, while this gentleman was there as a general. Was that related? I don't know. Then when he gets back, all of a sudden, the tactics the Taliban have been using start showing up in Nigeria. Never before had happened. And then soon enough, you have Al-Qaeda and you have ISIS all coming to live in his caliphate. And he's never spoken against them. He's never taken action against them. He's never asked them to stop. He claimed just the other day that not one person gets killed in his caliphate without the traditional rulers knowing about it. Well, we have documented. We know there's at least 7,000 Christians have been killed. So does he know about them all? Why hasn't he spoken against it? If he's powerful and he wants it to stop, why hasn't it stopped? Why is there no record of him issuing a fatwa against it? If there's $9 billion of minerals being taken from his ground under his nose, what has he done to stop it? And if he hasn't done anything to stop it, is he benefiting from it? Where's that money going? Those questions need to be answered. I did the research. Not all of this is happening inside Nigeria, but all of it, 99.8% of the jihadi genocide violence is happening in the historic boundaries of his caliphate. So if it's all happening in his caliphate, and he's done nothing to stop it. Now, a few years back, when Boko Haram did not recognize his authority, he issued a fatwa against them, and he impacted their recruitment by, it says, 50%. So he has the ability to impact their recruitment, but that was only Boko Haram when they didn't recognize his authority. The other groups at the time, he didn't issue any fatwas, and he hasn't since.
And
And
so,
Boko Haram's is not the major player anymore. It's the Fulani militant militia.
so, so,
Why is there no record of him trying to stop it?
so by implication,
He
by
should be
implication,
investigated,
if
and he should answer these questions for
yeah,
sure.
okay. Now, there is a narrative brewing on Nigeria government supporters online, and that narrative since yesterday is that that Nigerians should wake up. Americans are coming to take your resources. And you just basically said now that Nigeria is
Yeah.
losing about 9 billion to these terrorists up north. Now,
Well, no, they're losing it mostly. I think to China is what the records show.
mm,
Terrorists don't use minerals. There are only, I believe, 7 or 8 nations on Earth that are large buyers of the kind of minerals found in North Nigeria. There is China is the biggest. You have Germany. I think you have India. You have the United States. There's a few. There's a few nations. Look, Nigeria's wealth is in the minerals. I've always been an advocate for Nigeria gaining the ability to process those minerals. The more Nigeria processes those up to the finished product, the better it's going to be for Nigeria. I advocate for that strongly. I also advocate for bringing transparency, and I believe that the minerals should benefit the people that live above the ground, not
mm,
people overseas that are coming to loot, whether they be from the United States or anywhere. I think that should benefit Nigerians, and I think there's technology today with blockchain that's being used in other countries, and also with a system like the United States. You have to be licensed, you have to be registered, you have to be certified, and it's transparent. By putting those things in place in Nigeria and requiring that instead of 10% going to corruption, 10% goes to the community for building a mineral depot for the artisan miners, for putting in a school, putting in a clinic, putting in a security outpost. I'm a strong advocate for that. Now, unless you're going to shut down the mineral trade and then they shut down the economy, you got to sell it to somebody. So all I've ever said is pick wisely, choose wisely. Do you want to keep selling to the country that today is funding the terror by buying these blood minerals illegally? I don't think you want to sell them to China or any other country that's involved in that. So that leaves a handful. The United States is one of them. So yeah, I think it's smart for you to consider that. There's only a few customers. I'm not trying to say sell it to the United States. I'm saying choose wisely. And historically, there's not been. Look, believe me, I'm the biggest critic of my country. We still have IDP camps in the United States. They're called Indian reservations, and it makes me sick to my stomach. Um, there's a lot of black marks on our history, but the fact is, you can't imagine a world today without the United States. There hasn't the whole idea of freedom and democracy. You have to go back to ancient Greece to find another iteration of that in the history of the world. The world would be a dark place, and a lot of the world would be speaking German and Japanese right now if it weren't for the United States of America. So we are, while we have our flaws, we are the most benevolent nation on earth. And I can also tell you this: the policies like Obama did that make me sick, and I've been trying to yell about that for a long time, that Obama helped cause this. I've been the
mm.
loudest critic of that, but that fact is they hide it and deny it because that's not the heart of the American people. The heart of the American people would hang that person, execute him if they found out that that's what he did. So that wasn't the United States that did that. That was an evil man who was. Look, the difference between Obama and Trump is greater than the difference between Jonathan and Buhari. So can you say that Goodluck Jonathan's evil because of what Buhari did? Because they're Nigerians? No, of course not. Obama was an evil man. He was the satanic. He was the worst president in the United States history and possibly in the history of the world. And most Americans I know would say the exact same thing. So don't blame America for what Obama did. But you have minerals, that's your economy. You got to sell them to someone. Don't sell them to the country that's been buying them illegally and funding the terror. That knocks the list down considerably. So yeah, be smart
Okay.
about it.
So,
That's just it. Be smart about it. That's all I've ever
sure.
said.
Sure, I agree. I agree with that point. Now, I don't know how much time you still have.
I'm
You
good.
know,
They're not coming for me yet. So
yeah, I'm watching your back. When they come, I will know.
thank you. No, I think we're
Okay,
good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
just keep
okay.
going.
So, but now, if I come to you now and I say, could this declaration, if eventually formalized, You hinted to it before now. Could it lead to U.S. sanction, visa restrictions, aid conditions, conditionalities against Nigerian government or security agencies? And when that happens, isn't that going to hurt the poor Nigerians, even more the Christians, again, that the U.S. is probably trying to fight for?
Yeah. So, the one another word for the CPC is it's colloquially known as the Religious Persecution Watch List.
Yeah.
What it is, most importantly, is a recognition that this is happening. I haven't been in favor again of blanket sanctions, for example, because that's like chemotherapy when surgery is better. If you have a cancer and you know where it is and you can get it from surgery, then get it from surgery. Don't use chemotherapy. I don't. And what I can say is wait and see, because Donald Trump is not a fool. Donald Trump is a man that knows how to get stuff done, and you know the difference. If you can go to a mechanic that'll take 5 hours to fix a spark plug, or you can go to a mechanic that'll change it in 5 minutes, and it's the same thing because he knows what to do. Donald Trump's going. First of all, he's not into bureaucratic gobbledygook, and he's not into slow processes. When the perpetrators are identified, and they will be if they haven't been already, um, I believe it'll be surgical, it'll be quick, and it'll be absolute. That's the way Donald Trump works. That's how he's ended 8 wars and brought peace to the Middle East. He gets stuff done. So yeah, there is a toolkit in the CPC that, in some hands, could certainly cause problems for all of Nigeria, which is horrible. But even then, chemotherapy is better than dying of cancer. But I
True.
believe you're going to see surgical, precise, targeted, smart, absolute, just like he's done with the drug cartels,
Okay.
sending their drug boats across the Gulf of America. Um, he ain't, he's declared them a foreign terrorist organization, and so he's knocking out these boats with missiles. He's not messing around. Not messing around. He's not going to mess around with this. Watch and see. And that's why I said the second sentence was more important. This is a good start. This is just the beginning. Just
And
wait. Just
okay.
wait. He's gonna solve this, and he's gonna do it in a way that raises everybody up, and that's fair and that's honest. He's a good man, and we better dang well take it before the White House changes hands again.
Okay, Mike, I have another guest here. That's Eze Luce. Eze Luce, are you ready? He's a legal practitioner in Nigeria. I just want to have some legal perspective here. But Eze Luce, are you there?
I am. I'm very much here.
Okay.
And
yeah, thank you very much. Just by means of introduction, your question here. Thank you for joining us here. I think Eze Luce is joining us from the city of Owerri in Nigeria.
That's my hometown in Nigeria. I consider that's most of my early trips were to Owerri.
And Mike, I want you to know, that we appreciate what you've done for Nigeria. God will bless you. I mean, you have a lot of insults thrown at you. People will throw stones at you, but keep on doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is going to save a lot of lives, thousands of lives. I mean, those who think that the issue of Christian genocide is politicized are very wrong. This started quite a while ago, and we've written severally about it, right from the onset of Muhammadu Buhari's regime. Unfortunately, the current president, Bola Tinubu, has not helped matters. He has rather worsened it. He also fell for the same trap that Buhari did when he traveled to Benue. Rather than stop the killings, he asked the victims to accommodate their killers. You simply don't do that. So, Mike, we appreciate you. You're not Nigerian, but you are Nigerian. I mean, you are human, and that is all it takes.
Amen.
To speak up
Amen.
against genocide is to be
Amen.
human. So we appreciate you.
Well,
Yes.
thank you. My papa,
So,
Professor John Okwebe, was from Owerri.
My interest in all this is this. Yes, those who have been talking about that this is just coming up as trying to politicize issues, they don't understand the issues. For several years, thousands of Christians have been killed, slaughtered, Mass burials have taken place in Nasarawa, Benue, Plateau, Adamawa, Taraba. Thousands of Christians have been killed. And what was the response by the Nigerian government? Nothing.
That's
but
right.
that people should go and appease their killers. Under Buhari, it was, what do you want? Do you want your land or you want your life? Under the rule of Bola, this Tinubu fellow, it's been worse because the killings go on, and the military, you know what they do? They put some Christians in vital positions, like the former chief of army staff, chief of defense staff, Chris Musa. He was a Christian, but he did not command a single troop, a single soldier.
Yep.
So when the killings took place, he is not there.
Right.
And the evidence is abundant. So we cannot stop thanking Mike,
Okay.
Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Bod. I mean, you are saving lives. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ezeluche, please. Thank you very much for your
Yes.
intervention. But let me come back here. From a legal standpoint and the human rights perspective, how accurate is
Yes.
Trump's claim that thousands of Christians are being killed in Nigeria? Now, again, because this has become a reoccurring point in the Nigerian public discourse, that yes, everybody agrees. We all here in Agatu, we woke up in January and we buried 250 people in one day. And recently, and we saw the day the president didn't make any statement where over 50 lives were lost. And President Muhammad Buhari did the same thing. Inadvertently, it appears that our leaders value our lives. I don't know. They don't value our lives. They probably value us more than their dogs. Maybe. That's the way I feel. But looking at all these things, do you think, that this narrative, because if you read the President Trump's message that he sent out, nowhere did he use the word genocide. So are we playing with semantics? Yes, there is killing. Yes, there is greater number of killing of Christians. But in the legal phraseology here, would you then consider that these killings amount to genocide, considering the UN definition of genocide?
Good. Thank you very much. The reality is this. Is there a systematic process towards this? I mean, genocide is when you do ethnic cleansing in a systematic manner geared towards eliminating or evacuating the people of a particular creed and people who can be identified, whether by race or creed or whatever. Is there a systematic approach towards eliminating them from where they are? So the issue is this: there has been a systematic approach at cleansing the middle belt of Christians of 200, 300 people. It is systematic in the sense that the approach is the same. The military or the police go in first. They do what is called the mop-up weapons, which includes farm utensils from the locals. They collect their cutlasses, they collect their Dane guns, such that when the killers now come, the people are bereft of any means of defense. So there's a systematic approach to it. And what is it geared to? It is geared to eliminating a people of an identifiable people. These people are identifiable. They are Christians, they are not Muslims, and they are killed en masse. So it qualifies technically under the UN conventions, the Rome Statute, as genocide. Now, the argument they have always propped up is this, that yes, these killers also kill some Muslims. No doubt. Now, you ask yourself, what kind of Muslims are killed? What happens in the northern part, in Zamfara Kebbi, is that the Fulani jihadists kill the native Hausas. That is the one aspect. And the other one is the Sunni Muslims kill the Shia Muslims, because they are the minority in Nigeria. So those are also taking place. But the Trump action is geared towards the genocide against Christians. And is there a genocide taking place? Without equivocations, the answer is yes. Has it been systematic? Yes. Are the people who are the victims, can they be identified? Yes. Are they being killed to ensure that they leave their lands? Yes. Because what happens is when these killings take place, what the killers take over the land, and the government watches these things. They take the people who own the land to IDP camps. They become refugees in their own country. They lose their land, lose their houses. So, I mean, it qualifies as genocide in theoretical terms, but in practical terms, yes.
Thank you very
So
much.
we are. Let me clarify once more. It didn't just start today. In Trump's first tenure in office, when Muhammadu Buhari visited Donald Trump in the White House, pointedly, Donald Trump asked Muhammadu Buhari, "Why are you killing Christians?"
That's true.
That question was not a fluke. That question was based on imperative and clear evidence. And there was the answer, it was not to elicit an answer from Buhari, but rather to tell him to stop. Unfortunately, Trump was removed by the Biden and the Democrats, and then they restored Nigeria back to whatever they want. But the reality is it has been continuing. That is why we cannot but fail to appreciate what Mr. Mike has done and the various advocates against Christian genocide in the United States have done. In Nigeria, we know what next will happen. There will be a clampdown on Nigerians who have also advocated for this. But it doesn't hurt us because those who have been killed are gone. And we all know that as Christians, once we are born, we will die. But it is better to speak up against atrocities, to speak up against evil, lest we become what the traditional religionists or the Christians are suffering in Darfur, in South Sudan. We can see the Janjaweed killing them en masse. We will not wait until the same thing replicates itself in Nigeria before we start speaking up. So without equivocations, Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been presiding over a genocidal regime targeted at Christians in Nigeria, and they should be stopped. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mike, having listened to this, from the legal standpoint, obviously you've highlighted similar when you spoke. Do you agree entirely with his postulation as to the the phraseology of genocide, vis-a-vis putting into consideration the statement of the president that nothing of such word genocide was used?
Well, you know what? What does it matter what word you use? There are, whether it's Christians or Muslims or atheists, there are innocent, productive, peaceful Nigerians being slaughtered by the bushel. There are millions displaced, dispossessed, denied, ground down. Who cares what religion they are? They're human beings.
Correct.
Who cares what? And that's why I say, yes, what's happening in the North will be eventually untangled and prosecuted. But if you remember, you may not remember, in America, the O.J. Simpson trial was a big deal. He was guilty as sin, but he got off because the attorneys kept it tied up in court and picked it apart. You could pay attorneys to fight stuff forever, and until all the mass graves are exhumed, it might be a while. Right now, and I would ask the Eze to respond to this if he's still on. The definition of genocide includes denial of aid to IDPs. By simply acknowledging their existence, there is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of free aid. By global mandate, there is funding to take care of every IDP on the face of the earth today. All they need to be is recognized. All they need to be do is recognized. This government has intentionally, systematically purged the language. It's been more than a decade of doublespeak. They've been called criminals, beggars, everything else. Their aid's been denied. What the without any legal mumbo jumbo, without any mincing of words, without any attorneys debating whose bones these are, the president of Nigeria and the Nigerian government today stands guilty of genocide for their denial of aid to the internally displaced people. That is legal precedent at the International Criminal Court. The Nigerian government is guilty of genocide, regardless of the northern atrocities. They're guilty of genocide by the atrocities right there in Abuja. That is genocide. So yes, this is a genocidal administration for sure at the IDPs. Up north, you can mince words. It doesn't matter. Let's get the criminals out. Let's get them to justice. Then we can figure out what's going on up north. This is stop it first. Stop the killing. Who cares what you call it? We both agree, me and Leslie, that is genocide, But so what? One person being killed this way is too much. One person is too much. God, why debate words?
So, Mike, what you've done and the way things happened in the last 2 weeks. I mean, if you ask me, that was so quick that we got to this point. That was really like, firebrand. That was so quick. But, in thinking about it, the way suddenly you've been speaking with the NSA, and I saw a report you wrote yesterday, you forwarded it to the NSA, to the Senate President, to Reno Omokri, and you shared a screenshot. Now, and I thought to myself, I think Mike is making enough enemy now. So from the things you've tried, from the way and manner you've tried to upset.
I'm the earth shaker. What can you expect?
Well,
I have fun.
Reno, your former friend, is a table shaker. So now you are the earth shaker, okay? So
he was a former acquaintance, a friendly acquaintance. I would never have. I don't have many friends. I don't use that term very much. So he was a friendly acquaintance. Yeah.
Okay. So now my question to you is, would you feel safe again returning to Nigeria to continue some of the work you do within the IGP, internally displaced people area?
I will return, and I will continue the work. I don't think I can return in the same way. I just did a Grok report because you said something, and Grok said, and you can. I encourage you to ask as well. I am the most famous American in Nigeria today.
Yes, I said at the beginning.
When I left Nigeria the other day, I had 114 followers on X. My first post since then got over 2 million hits within a couple days. Crazy. I don't know that it'll ever be the same for me. But here's the thing. Like I said, I don't have a death wish. There's a lot that I want to do in this life, and I want to do a better job of getting my wife secured before I go anyway. Like I said, I'm not a wealthy man. But I was willing to lay down my life to tell the truth. And a couple of years ago, I reconnected with 2 old college friends, same age. They're both dead now. Different things. 2 out of 3. You never know when it's coming for you. And I just figured if this is my time to go, I can think of worse ways to be remembered. And so there's nothing going to stop me from going and doing the work God's called me to do. And I don't want it to cost me my life. I'm going to have security. I'm going to be more careful, of course. But if that's the way God wants me to go, I can think of worse ways to be remembered.
Okay.
And you know what? It's just one step in the glory, man. Heaven is my home.
Okay. So before I let you go, Mike, my final question to you, and in case anyone watching us here wants to ask any question, you can raise your digital hand. I will call upon you to do so. Now, let me play the devil's advocate here. I'm from the government. I want to get this off my back. Finally, what steps should the Nigerian government, religious leaders and civil society take in response to this declaration to avoid further diplomatic and escalation to promote unity in Nigeria. What should Nigeria do? What we've seen them do in the last 2 weeks is send Reno Omokri to, all over the place, send the Daniel
He's
Boala to
fired.
France.
I don't think he works for the government anymore at all. I don't think he ever will again. If you could do the research, you can grok it. The biggest PR fiasco in the history of Africa is what he just did.
So in that case,
I don't think he works.
So
I
the
don't think he
meeting
has
with
friends
you
in the
got
government.
him fired. Is that what you're saying?
I can't confirm that, but I think so. No, he got himself fired. He was the dumbass that set that whole thing up and never asked me what I was going to say. Come on, what an idiot! I mean, come on. They trusted. Can you imagine being the president, watching that and saying I trusted this snake Omokri, and look what he did? Can you imagine being Nuhu Rabadu? He was on the phone with me. I have the phone records. He can't deny it.
Yeah.
And now he's implicated because Reno pulled him into that. You think they're ever going to want to work with that idiot again? God, why do you think he's standing there in his little tights dancing around like a woman on camera trying to get attention? He's toast. God. And he deserves to be. Anybody, he can flip-flop on party, he can flip-flop on policy, but to flip-flop on genocide? How soulless. God. No, that man, I'm surprised he's showing his face in public. He fled to Ethiopia instantly. And he's dancing around in tights now, showing videos of him getting his eyebrows plucked. I mean, come on. You think he's got influence anymore? Gee.
So, what do you think?
That was fun. I'm sorry.
I mean, I appreciate that. But to my final question, do you think?
So, what can the government do? What can they be doing to avoid sanctions?
Yes.
I don't think that's what they should be asking. I think they should be asking what they should do to avoid the Nuremberg-style trials that are coming to Nigeria.
Wow.
Trump's not messing around. It's not about, oh, gee, they're going to tax our corn. This is about, am I going to be executed for being complicit in this genocide? And that's what they should be thinking. They should be thinking, are my grandchildren going to change their names because they're ashamed to be associated with me because I was involved in this genocide? We are living in the modern Holocaust, complete with concentration camps all over Nigeria. Imagine living in 1941 and all of a sudden social media came on the scene and people found out what was going on. That's what we're in right now. They should be worried about their very lives and their legacy and what name they're going to leave their children. And so the way to avoid that, you can DM me. If you are in the government, I've offered this to the contacts I know. If you want to turn state's evidence, I'm not connected with the government, but I guarantee you that the government would take care of you and get you witness protection and get you set up. If you're a high-ranking official and if you want to come clean, and if you want to preserve your life and your legacy and your family name and everything you hold dear, you better get on the right side of history right now. That's what they should be doing, is working to end this with everything they've got. Otherwise, they're going down, just like the Nazis did. Because that's who they are. That they are the Adolf Hitler, the Nazis of today, running the concentration camps. New Kuchingoro, these camps, that's the Nigerian Auschwitz. Every bit.
Mike, these guys are shameless. They will not bother. They will think they will buy their way through this. They will bribe their way out of it. So they are shameless. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Mockery is still working for them, because that is their DNA, shamelessness. So well, let's see what happens. And I hope they are thinking of how to lift themselves out of this mess.
Well, like I said,
I have no light here.
Ezeluche, like I said before, and John, and Mike also pointed that out. The challenge here will be, how to really get hold of those who are behind it without really hurting the Nigerians that are already on the ground, because if you put up a blanket sanction, at the end of the day, they've got multiple passports. They can always, if America becomes, too hot for them to visit, they could always go elsewhere. So, I mean,
every Nigerian can help the country avoid sanctions. Yeah. I challenge every Nigerian. Go outside of your home, walk around where the police have called it a homeless shelter or criminal, go in there and ask them their stories. Find out who the IDPs are. You got a video camera on your phone? Get a video of them telling their story and post it online. The more Nigerians, the more the light, there's no such thing as darkness. The more the light shines, the darkness flees. You can see how they're scurrying now. Come on, the Sultan of Sokoto responded to an unofficial private citizen who's a unwealthy, no-name man from the hill country of Texas. They're scared because the light's shining, and every Nigerian holds a light in their hand. It's called your video camera. Go and find an IDP in your neighborhood. Go and find a camp and put it online. Talk about it. The darkness won't last. There's no way it can. The rats scurry and the roaches hide when the lights turn on. Turn on the lights. Everybody can be a reporter. Everybody can find the truth and share it. And when you do that, this tyranny that's controlled you and fear will end very soon. It's in your hands. There's no white man, no sanction can save you. You can only save yourself. The door is open now. The light's shining. Make it happen.
Thank you very much, Mike. That's a very fine place to anchor this conversation. Once more, I appreciate your time. It was difficult since yesterday to get this happen, and I'm glad finally it did happen. Thank you very much. Thank you. So viewers, thank you very much for joining us. That's been Mike Arnold, who had a couple of weeks ago a press conference with Reno Macri where he was told to tell the truth. And he told the truth. And the truth hurt so hard for those who have been holding Nigerians to ransom, that those who are in denial that there is no mass killing, and he was able to expose that. We've been having this conversation on President Donald Trump's declaration of Nigeria as a country of a particular concern over the Christian killings in the country. As he said, it doesn't matter the semantics of whether this is genocide, this is mass killing, or whether this is targeted is irrelevant. What we know is that human beings in their numbers are dying, and all they have to do is to stop it. This argument, by the government side, oh, this is not genocide, this is this, doesn't really cut it. Everyone, and what Mike said here is that should stop. No human being, especially Christians and Muslims, no human being should die because he or she is born or he or she is of a particular faith. That is not acceptable. Once more, Mike, thank you very much for being my guest.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, good night, everyone. And those of you who are joining us online, thank you very much for being there. And thank you.